Robbie, alcoholic.
Hey,
Thanks for having me. I appreciate that. This is it's just one of the other, I think, gifts of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been blessed to be a part of a group that has some heavy hitters in it, and these guys. You get a speaker tape, and then the next day the guy's over there getting coffee, and that happened a couple times. And so I got kind of spoiled, I really think, in Alcoholics Anonymous early on. I was blessed to be around some people that did the deal and showed me how to do the deal. Now, I didn't come here thinking that's what was going to happen, and I didn't do that right away when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. When I first got here, I was 21 years old. I hadn't spilled that much booze on my tie, and I really just didn't think I had to do what you guys asked. I didn't get a sponsor. My girlfriend drugged me to Alcoholics Anonymous. She was in AA. She tricked me, and it was fine if she sponsored me. It seemed to work out pretty well for a little while. And and there came a time and place where she didn't want to play house anymore. And I was thinking, that's insane. I'm sober. How could you not want to play house with me? I'm living at your house for free. Your dad's a heart surgeon. This will all be mine someday. And I kind of see today that that's an insanity, right? That I'm managing my life in all these other ways. And, when it says about, I think, Dale's in this meeting, and I've known him my entire sobriety. And I think, Bill, when he wrote this letter and he put, or love in there, that's what I think I got a little mixed up on as far as sponsorship goes early on. So instead of getting a new sponsor or, doing the steps or anything like that, really, I probably should replace the girl. And I did that. In early sobriety, untreated alcoholism rampant, self-will run riot, just nuts, trying to fill up the hole with anything outside of myself. And, the idea that I was sober was a great vehicle for my family too, because you could get a couple $100 here and there if you went back and said, well, I'm sober now, can I borrow some money? So I kept digging the hole deeper with the men's, and eventually what happened was girlfriend number 2 didn't know girlfriend number 1, but they both shared a common language about me. And that language was I was selfish, inconsiderate, dishonest. And the funny part today when I look back on that is I didn't know anything else, right? That was all I knew. And, I thought there's no way this could be a coincidence. Maybe they do know each other and they're talking, because I doubt I'm the problem. I mean, I really doubt I'm the problem here. That just seems like too much of a coincidence. And, girlfriend number 2 starting to say she don't play house anymore. And, I'm about to graduate college with a degree in basket weaving and, student loans. Early sobriety, the deal I made with God was I'm not going to work. You make sure I don't have to work and I'll stay sober was kind of the deal I made with God. And so what I thought how that manifested itself in my life was every credit card that came in the mail, I got, and every student loan I got. And, so at an early age of, 23 years old, I think I had 40 grand in credit cards and 40 grand in student loans and, promising degree in basket weaving. And when I say that, it's really a fine arts degree, which is basically the same thing. But at the same time, this was kind of happening in my life, and my life is, in Alcoholics Anonymous is going down and not really getting any better. There's this guy that comes in like 10 months after me. And he does some things that I think are just crazy. He gets a sponsor right away. He gets in a workshop. They start reading that blue book. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's around people. Some people have it. And his life starts to change, right? And his life starts to get better. Somewhere in there, like 2 or 3 months, he's written some inventory and his sponsors got him making amends. And I'm just like, slow down. This is way too fast. I don't want to go that fast because I don't want to make any amends. So I'm subscribing to the idea that you want to do this, a step a year. So when I'm 8 years sober, I can make amends. Little did I know that there's no possible way I could probably stay sober that long. But the psychic pain of not doing this would eventually catch up with me. And so this guy, Matt, is doing all this stuff right, and his life is changing. And my life's getting worse. It's not getting any better. And the only thing I can kind of attribute to is he's going to this meeting on the south side of Indianapolis, right? And the men's at Stag, and they're pretty serious. And for me, I live downtown, so that was way too far. 25 miles past going to any lengths, and so I didn't go there. But what happened with the new girlfriend is we moved like 30 seconds away from it. I mean, literally, I almost could walk there. So I had no excuse not to go to that meeting anymore. And I started going to that meeting, and that's where I met Charlie. And Charlie was one of my first resentments out of that meeting. He beat me for the secretary's position, which I thought was like a competition, and I got the coffee maker position. But I didn't know that God was trying to save my life here. I had no idea that God was trying to save my life. And what happened was I would make coffee, and this guy would come walking down the steps and say something to me that I found so frightening, is I don't know people sober as long as you are without a sponsor. And I'm 2 years sober, absolute insanity. And he says it to me over and over again, like week after week. And finally it clicks. Oh, I asked this guy to be my sponsor, right? And what I had tried prior to this was another way to manage my life was I got in a workshop unsponsored. And I took my big book, which I probably had to dig out of some hiding place that I had stuck it. And I went to this workshop. And what happens if you don't have a sponsor and you go to a workshop, in my experience, is I didn't ask for any help. So I didn't get the secret decoder ring that tells me how to look at the big book, right? That this is a manual that's going to save my life. And so I ended up in that workshop literally copying people's inventories, like cheating on the homework. And they called me out on it, and made me do it again. And I was more resentful. And, and then all this was making me thirsty, making me really thirsty. And here I was again with this guy in my face saying that, you need to get a sponsor. And he started taking me through the book. And he lived on the south side of town, way, way far south. And I just thought, this is, I'll do it because somebody else did it. And they told me it might work. And he taught me how to write inventory. And we went back through the big book and we looked at, was I really an alcoholic? Because I questioned whether I'm so young, right? How could I be alcoholic? He asked me if I needed to take the test. Do you need to go back out and drink again? And I didn't, because I know what's going to happen, right? And immediately, that's how my mind works is, can you do 2 drinks a day for 7 days? No, I'll do 14 at the end. And, and immediately he's like, no, you can't do that. And I get to the point where we're just holding hands and saying prayers in his living room. And I'm sure some of you have all had similar experiences to this. If you're long-term sober and still doing this deal, and and taught me how to write inventory. My first inventories, sometimes my inventories today aren't very good, and my ego likes to protect itself, right? It likes to fight off any idea that I'm the problem, right? That it's somebody else's fault. And the crazy part is, like, I'm gathering evidence for a trial case or something, and that's not true. It's just really not true. And I need other people in Alcoholics Anonymous still to this day to show me, and when I write an inventory in the 4th column, where my mistake is sometimes, because I'm not clear on it. I'm just not clear. And that's where I struggled in early inventories. I would write the 2nd column, this giant long thing about how I was victimized. And then in the 4th column, I would defend it. And that's why I think I deserve to sit with some of these sponsees and listen to that stuff these days, because I did that to somebody else, and it's really, really, it's kind of amazing to get on the other side of it. Right. Because, just the insanity that I wasn't the problem, right? That I've been collecting evidence and all these events throughout my life that have caused me harm, and I'm keeping score. And, we wrote fear inventory, we wrote conduct inventory. And, this is these little kind of weird workshops I had gotten in, but prior to that, or trying to write an inventory on my own, nothing felt like that, where I got to 6 and 7 and knew I didn't want to live like this anymore, and that I wanted to be free, right? And I wanted to be free, and I don't want to continue to live this way. And I think, even today, when I get to that point, when I'm going back through the steps with somebody else, I want to get free, right? I want to write inventory. I want to be free of what I'm seeing on paper in front of me in black and white, and I want God to remove it. And if I have some recent amends, I'm trying to clean those up. And I left the house with a list of amends. And a lot of times what was weird about that particular inventory process was, he would send me home with amends to the girlfriend, like every single time. And this, my inventory was so self-pity and shitty. It took a few weeks to kind of get through it, right? So every week, girlfriend amends, girlfriend amends, girlfriend amends. To the point where I'm coming home and she's saying, "What do you owe me an amends for now?" And I can't get clear on that, right? I don't know. And the at the time I remember thinking, why is he doing this? Like this, I mean, I know he wants me to like, live a better life, but recently I had to sponsor somebody and realized why he was doing it. He didn't want me coming back on his door in the middle of the night knocking and saying, "She kicked me out. I don't know why she kicked me out." And I think he would, he could see that. He could see that. He could see that I was just selfish, inconsiderate, only thought of myself 999% of the time. So, one of the things he asked me to do early on was to ask if there was anything I could do around the house, right? And I had to wait till she had turned her back, and then I said, "Is there anything I can help you with?" And she slowly turned around, like, "Who are you? I don't know you. You're someone else. That's not who I live with. The guy I live with is only thinking about himself, right?" And so, over time, those things kind of got a little more natural, right? And they seemed sincere, but in the beginning, they didn't. They really, really didn't. My wife and I. So my sobriety date's October the 22nd, 1989. I've been sober 31 years. Our first date was 29 years ago this weekend, and this kind of slash on there is, your token has like how long you've been sober, how long the last relationship you've been in, and then how long have you been employed, right? And those are kind of the test of where my relationships are in this world. I spend 10% of my waking hours maybe in Alcoholics Anonymous and some type of prayer and meditation, and another 90% of my life is really with work and my family. And it really is kind of the testament of what am I doing in my life to help those people and stay centered. And that 10% of what I'm doing in AA during my waking hours is totally reflects on how I handle them. So I had some early on issues with money. I know nobody in Alcoholics Anonymous ever has those problems. And mine was I didn't have any. And there was this strange concept that I didn't really like. And it was, I called my sponsor, said, "I don't have any money to pay my bills." And he said something I didn't like, and he hung up. And he said, "Get a job." And he hung up the phone. And I didn't like that. And my first thought, instead of thinking, he's right, I thought, gosh, he's in a bad mood today. I'll call him tomorrow. And this kind of stuff went on. I'm just thick-headed about this stuff. Like it just that can't really be happening to me. And 3 or 4 of those, get a job and hang up. And I was like, I think he's serious about this. And I still didn't take any direction. And this is the kind of direction I need. And I still need some of this today from God and the people around me is very specific. Manpower hires today, and he would hang up the phone. And I got a job at Manpower. I followed the directions, right? I didn't like it. My ego didn't like it. Then I got a job at, delivering pizzas right after that. And I would deliver a pizza. And on my way back from delivering the pizza, the mantra in my head was, I'm going to quit this job right when I get back. And I would run into the bathroom, get down on my knees and say a prayer. To the point that everybody was like, "Why do you have to go to the bathroom when you come back from a delivery?" And I was like, "You don't understand. I will quit this job if I don't do that." And it's just insanity. Just plain insanity is all. And when I look back on that time in my life, and these are just skills I didn't have, just didn't have. The crazy part about responsibility in my life and what that's a reflection of is I thought responsibility was the wrong direction. I thought if you get rid of all your responsibilities, if I don't have any bills and I don't have any relationships and I'm on my own with a tent and a backpack, I'm free, right? And I think today that's just the opposite. That the freedom comes from taking responsibility, And in early sobriety, I'd seen on the back of the pamphlets where it says, wherever I go, I want the hand of AA to always be there. And for that, I'm thankful. And, I just thought, I don't know if I could do that. I'm not that person. Um, and I don't think I was. And that's where this is kind of crazy is God changes us, right? And if I start on this process and I somewhere commit to it, I don't know what's going to come out the other end. And that's kind of the miracle here. And I don't have to. Um, so I've got a men's list, and I've got this girlfriend who won't marry me. And I'm only thinking about myself, now maybe like 93% of the time. And, somewhere along the lines, I get assigned a sponsee, which is kind of a cool thing. And, it wasn't the guy I wanted, and it didn't matter because really they just told me this guy needs some help and they need you to take him through the big book. And we started doing that. And if you look at my life and the insanity of my life, and when you talk about, Bill's writing in this letter in particular, he really is like one of God's poets, and how he moves the pencil and talks to the alcoholic at 4 years sober in the big book Alcoholics Anonymous is not what I'm capable of. I'm not even capable of that at 31 years sober. So I think, God was moving the pen and doing for us what, I couldn't do. And I don't know about you guys, but I've got an amends list, and I'm starting to make amends. And the side effect of making these amends and paying back some of this money, which I don't want to do, but I don't want to go to my family and say, I owed you this amount of money when I got sober, and now it's this amount of money. And I need to start paying that back. And my ego doesn't want to do it because my sponsor's going to make me do it in installments, right? I don't have the money. I'm incapable of paying this back in one lump sum. But the crazy part about that is, and the spiritual kind of concept here is that I don't have to, right? I just have to trust that if I start doing this, something's going to change. I started paying back a little bit to my family, my brother and my sister. And, we couldn't sit in the same rooms together. Our lives changed. We got closer together, right? It's kind of the side effect of that. The girlfriend becomes the wife. We've been together this whole time. It's kind of an amazing love affair. When I look at it, if you go back and go, wow, 29 years, that's insane. Nobody wanted to be around me for more than 13 minutes. If I'm blacking out and biting the hostess on the leg, they're not asking me back. And, she really is my best friend. She has a few problems. I will share some of those with you. She has a terrible drinking problem. She says, I'm starting to feel it. I better stop, which makes no sense to me. She thinks about other people when she wakes up in the morning. I have to get up and do prayer and meditation first to think about other people, right? And so I know I'm just not wired up the same way. And that the crazy part about being in a relationship for that long is we do have our ups and downs, and we've grown closer together through some of the hardest parts of life, right? We've had children have grown up. They don't live with us anymore, which is absolutely insane. They are out living their own lives, and we just have to let them do that, And, I was thinking about kind of this letter, and when I think about depression in my life, I really think more about anxiety and what keeps me up at night, and the worry and the fear in my life, and what drives me today. And when I think about that, some of it is my kids, and I go back to Gary with inventory, and I read an inventory about these kids, and he tells me that it's not my job to protect them anymore. They're not in my home anymore. It's my job to love them and to continue to love them, whatever choices they make, right? And I'm just supposed to be there. And those are some of the things, I have this idea of how I want it all to turn out for everybody. And it's just not going to happen my way, right? So I continually need God's help with all that stuff. So with work, my work life, I'm not an angel. I'm not a spiritual giant. And, I yelled at people on the loudspeaker at work. That's kind of who I am sometimes. and I take the bait, right? I take this bait. There's like I don't do enough prayer and meditation in the morning. I'm off kilter, and I run with whatever the bait is out there. And I, like a fish in the sea, I take the hook and I'm off running, and I'm absolutely just a wreck. And you know, the crazy part about my work life and amends is the more amends that I kind of got done, the more responsibility I was given in my work life. And my work changed, right? The work changed. It changed for several reasons. One, I wrote tons of inventory about my employer over the years, and I worked for these guys for 10 years, and you know, everybody knew their names, and over and over again I'd read them inventory, and you know, they had nicknames for one of them, and you know, I'm asking for God's help with all this, and I'm still just full of resentment and fear, and you know, I told my sponsor that you're probably wrong about this, that you don't know what you're talking about, Gary, and I need to go to the boss and tell him about this person at work. She's absolutely horrendous, right? And and I'm sure you've worked with somebody like that, you know, that they're always doing the wrong thing, and I'm sure the owner would want to know about it, right? And so I had built my case. You know, I had a really good case, I had good evidence, and I went to the owner, and instead of firing his wife, he fired me, and that was at 15 years sober. And you know, the crazy part about that is literally the words were, "That is not a good idea." And somewhere in the back of my mind, my ego just got big enough and big enough, like, no, I'm pretty sure he wants to know. I'm pretty sure he wants to know. I've also quit my job without talking to my sponsor first, and called him on the ride home and said, I quit my job. And he said, should you have called me first? And I was like, oh shit, you know, can we rewind this day? You know, can we just back this up? So, you know, I think those are some of the things where I make mistakes in my life today. And I'm up late at night. And I think what's kept me connected over all these years is somewhere along the lines, you know, doing 10, 11, and 12, which is working with somebody else and getting my nose back in the book and doing a workshop over and over and over again. I've been able to reconnect, right? And I've been able to find, you know, the sunlight of the spirit, because I believe what I do is like, I take these little pieces of window tint, right? And if you put window tint on something, you kind of graze it out a little bit. And then if you put some more on, and then you put some more on, you don't notice over time that now you've blocked everything out, right? And you can't, and it's not coming in, and you didn't know when that happened. And you know, through this process, I'm able to kind of take some of the window tint off, and what Bill's talking about. I want to walk in the sunlight of the spirit, right? I want to be one hand in hand with God of some service in this world where I'm actually contributing more than I'm taking out, right? Because that's what I'm used to doing, right? I'm used to making people's life worse than I make it better. And I think today my job is to make people's lives better. So sometimes people ask me, so why'd you start your own business? Well, I got fired. So just like every alcoholic, right? You get the opportunity to start your own business if you don't have anything else to do. So, and you don't work well with others, as a general point, but you know, I've had a simple idea, which is just that we're of service, right? And it's kind of, you know, what Chuck C talks about, which is how can we help, right? And you know, early on in sobriety, or early on when we started the business, somebody had asked me, well, what's your business plan, and what are you guys doing, and how are you going to do this? And I'm like, just how can we help, and we'll figure it all out later, right? And you know, the crazy part about like the student loans and the credit cards and all that stuff early on in sobriety, and then making all these amends and setting all this stuff on the right track, you know, by following the directions I was given, through God's power, not my own. When it was time to start this little thing, I had credit, right? I had the ability to borrow money in little sums, right? Not big sums, but enough to get started, you know. And I had experience from people in Alcoholics Anonymous who said, do this, don't do that. Hey, call this guy, talk to this guy, do this. And, one of my friends, Earl Peace, early on said, if you have trouble waking up in the morning and you start your own business, that you will never have trouble waking up in the morning. And, he's right. He's right. And, the crazy gift of all that is it still comes down to how can I help, right? And how can I help at work? How can I help at home? How can I help in Alcoholics Anonymous? And that kind of trifecta there, it is insanely powerful because it kind of fights the logical idea that I have to go to work and we have to make $1 on every single thing we do. That's not really what it says. It just says, how can I help? And if we happen to make any money as a side effect, that's great. It worked out. But the real goal was to help the customer. Whatever jam they were in, what can we help them get out of? And that kind of spirit, I would think, is almost what we do here in Alcoholics Anonymous when we're working with drunks. And when we do that with customers, we have lifelong customers that feel like they're on the same team with us, right? Walking hand in hand. Now, some of the mistakes I've made over the years with that have ended up in inventories and talking to Gary and kept me up late at night. It's a small business, right? We don't make tons of money and we don't have a lot of capital. And I have a credit line and I loaned the credit line out to 2 customers, entire credit line, $700,000. And I can't sleep. It's 2012. And just, yeah. So shortness of breath. I'm not taking any breaths in my body anymore. Right. Somebody owes me $700,000, 2 customers. And what God puts in my life is a new guy. Right. And my solution to this problem, and I'm not joking about this, was to use my car to run the guy's kids over was one plan. And another plan was just to run away. Right. And that I don't think that's what God wants for us. Right. He wants us to stand up. He wants us to be a part of this. I'm somehow portraying myself as a victim, right? That I didn't make this mistake. I didn't get in this peril on my own. And I did. So God puts a new guy in my life. His dad's long-term sober. He's denied for 20 years. He's out of alcoholism. This is going to be a lot of fun, right? We start meeting at Starbucks. We start reading the big book, and he tells me some drunken story and gets real embarrassed and runs out of my car and calls me the next day. He's like, "Why did I tell you that story?" And I was like, "Well, I know why you told me that story, because you're one of us. That's why you told me that story." But he didn't know at the time, right? And so this whole thing that's going on in the background with work, and that I'm basically on the ropes. We're going to be bankrupt if I don't if I don't run the guy's kid. My best idea is, or run the guy's kids over with my car. I'm going to be out of business. And I still keep meeting with this guy, and it kind of goes on, and we get to the inventory part. He's writing inventory and I'm writing inventory, and he shares his 5th step with me, and we talk about some of the stuff, and I share my 5th step with him, and I share my 5th step with my sponsor, and I come to the understanding that I made this mess, right? That I made this mess. And one of the reasons I made this mess was it was uncomfortable to ask these people to pay me, right? Because they were my big customers. I didn't want to have them do what they're supposed to do. And the crazy part about this is I think this is where I'm putting the window tent over the sunlight of the spirit, right? That this is how I'm blocking out God, sober, long-term, right? The bedevilments are active in my life. And, I can't take a deep breath in my own body. I can't sleep, which is not a good place to be either. And I'm living in constant fear. And I've got this inventory in front of me again. And then my mistake is I'm not asking these guys to do what they're supposed to be doing. And that's a constant theme of my life, right? My job is to give people directions at work. Time and time again, my sponsors come back to me and said, you're reading me this inventory, but you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is giving people directions. It's where I go to hide out. And the crazy part about this, there's somewhere in there of writing the inventory and asking God to remove it and getting quiet again and trying to get quiet, right? Trying to get back in the chair where I can do a little bit of prayer and meditation and plan my day, right? This intuitive thought kind of happens. And intuitive thought is loan them the money, right? Loan these two customers the money. And I don't have the money to loan them, but we can turn the receivable that they owe us into a loan. And it looks better on their books and keeps them from going bankrupt. It looks better on mine when the bank asks me, hey, what the hell's going on with these two guys? I can explain to them they got in some trouble. We're trying to help them out. They get to stay in business. We get to stay in business. Nobody gets really farther deeper in debt. We come out with a way to kind of plan for this. So like, I don't think I had that on my own. I really don't think that was what was going to happen if I was in charge, because I told you my plan was to run their kids over with my car, and that was solving absolutely nothing. So here I was back in the book again with the drunk, and my life just keeps kind of going along, and I didn't do that. I think that's the power of God in our lives. When I think recently about times I haven't slept, we have two kids, girl and boy. And, my oldest son is 24 and my youngest kid is 19. And at 19, she comes to us and says, I don't want to be a she, I want to be a he, and as a father, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And my first thought is, I'm going to kill the person that's prescribing testosterone to my daughter. And Gary didn't think that was a good idea. And the second thing he said to me, which was, it's my job to love them, right? It's my job to love them. It's my job to change the way I think about this, right? And that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. And, the crazy part is, my phone kind of just throws up pictures over the last couple of years. And I'm like, how did I miss the suits and the suit, like this, there was a picture with the suit and the tie and a couple other clues. And I was like, oh, she's just going through this ugly duckling phase. And when she pops out of it, she'll be on her merry way. Well, she did, but she popped out as a guy. Right. And then I just need to stay out of the way. Right. Because I'm going to make this worse for my wife. I'm going to make this worse for this kid who still needs our support and love. And I need to be somebody who can actually be helpful to both of them, right? And be part of their lives. And I don't think that stuff happens without the hand of AA and people in AA and talking to people in AA. And that's really the depth of Alcoholics Anonymous with experience and situations of whatever comes up. Has kind of been one of those powers in our lives that when you tap into that, it's insane. It's insane because, people regular people on the street don't have that. They can't go out and say, hey, call so-and-so, they dealt with this that way. And my experience has been here in Alcoholics Anonymous, somebody knows somebody who's had some kind of experience with all of this. Right. And the crazy part is, the crazy part is at work, we had a guy who was transitioning to be a woman. Right. And I was, I helped get the name changed in the computer and made sure everything was okay. And, and I'm kind of looking at that, like how I supported that happening at work, but here in my own family at home, I was struggling to even just like make sure that it was even going to be a thing. Thank God that was between me, my wife, my sponsor, and the child really doesn't know too much about it, and that we could still do it in all this with love. And I can say to him today, we still love you. We want to be a part of your life, whatever you're doing, and that's, I think the worst thing I could do is run somebody off. Alcoholics Anonymous, at work, or, here, heaven forbid, at home, right? Because the damage I did early on in my drinking, specifically to my family, is insane. PTSD, insane. And I don't want to do that to people sober. I do not want to do that to people sober. And it's one of the reasons I continually stay in Alcoholics Anonymous, that I want to be entrenched in a life that's worth living, right? And if that life is worth living, then it's worth sharing with other people. And I think that's what God makes happen here. And, Bill really is a poet. And, if it wasn't for God pushing the pen and him listening to other people, take this out, put this in, I know I wouldn't be here today. I think that's about all I got. Is that long enough?
Oh man, that was beautiful. Thank you so much, Robbie.
Thank you.
I really related so much with so many things that you said, but one of the kind of emotional side effects where Bill always leaned into depression, I always leaned into like just bad anxiety, especially with business stuff. I got sober when I was close to that age, and I've been sober 20 years, and I had the similar thing with business. You're married and 20 something years old. I was married at like 29 years old, and then like $100,000 of unsecured debt and this business thing that I couldn't figure out. Man, I was scared shitless. I woke up at night like, man, I'm in it. And I made a lot of money too, but I was like, man, I'm gonna have to off myself. I have to up my life insurance and off myself. And that's stuff that you feel like you can't tell people, and then that relationship, because I was so self-involved with that kind of fear and all that relationship just kind of blew up. And it's just, and it's funny to see how quickly God can fix something the more surrendered I get, when I really look at it and see the truth and I'm willing to do something about it. But there's a lot of times where I don't even want to look at it. And look at the deal. So but that was a great talk. Do you have some people that you'd like to, we usually have the person who shared, maybe call in a couple people and then we'll open it up.
Sure. How about Dale?
Dale, alcoholic. I was hoping you'd call him Gary. It's a good day to be sober. Thanks, man. And I was just thinking today, I was talking to somebody about my job. I teach, but I've perceived some other fellow faculty members as enemies. And when I heard you say that, and they're like, so just out of curiosity, when you call them certain names, which I will not share with you all, does that help to feed your resentment and anger? And I'm like, possibly. So, and it's like, so now I have some inventory points. And then I hear you talk about it again. And I really, when I came to AA, I was a victim. And I totally agree with, I am never able to really fill that fourth column out completely. Even when I do fill it out, a sponsor or the person I'm doing the inventory with is, hey, maybe you might want to add this to it. And I was like, I thought I did a perfect inventory here, So, but it's great points. And it is, and I've known you, since we were both hanging out in an apartment. You were living with that girl, and I was living in an apartment with 6 guys. We were all pretending to be sober across the hall from you, man. And just to see how much you've grown and what an awesome man you've become. I've really enjoyed our friendship, and I look forward to seeing you soon. We keep talking about coffee. We'll do that soon. Thank you very much for sharing tonight, Robbie. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Pete?
Thanks, Robbie. Excellent job. Boy, you kind of sent me back. I really appreciate your honesty. And what it brought to me, I don't have a whole lot to say. What it brought to me was, I understand the challenges of fatherhood a little bit better. I came into it late. Certainly when something comes completely out of your wheelhouse, and I'm not making comparisons, but that's how it was for me. Something I had no idea with my oldest boy, we've had some challenges, and he's 15. I mean, it's been going on for years, but boy, where you really summed it up for me was actually well before that, in that very simple phrase, if I'm able to say with meaning, how help for words come pretty hard a lot of times, like you, what happens emotionally is, and just in that situation, unfortunately, many, that's not the first thing that comes to mind. That's not the first words those aren't the first words that come out. I was also dwelling on the letter that was read, from Wilson about, for me, it's, these feelings of entitlement, or I don't want to share my time, whether it's with my family, whatever, after 25 years of sobriety. So it really is talk about an ongoing journey, and to start at one place, both emotionally, and be able to make such progress. It is a miracle. And sometimes, we don't know it until we start to dig in and reevaluate it and relive it and share it. And that's the beauty I get out of, you sharing. So honestly, I so admire you for it. This is a great meeting. We all have that kind of stuff, whether we're 100 years sober or whether we're, 2 years sober. I love how Bill put, well, the guy that's 6 weeks sober, 6 months sober, got it all naturally because he's got it going on fire. And here you sponsor a lot of people over the years, whatever, and then you start to second guess myself and in all of my decision making, and I heard a lot of that in what you said. So really appreciate it. Thanks, man. Love you.
Thanks, Pete.
Robbie, you got to pick one more, buddy.
Oh, one more. Okay.
Oh,
About
yeah.
Dave G.
Thanks, Robbie. I'm Dave. I'm an alcoholic, everybody. Thanks for the share. I enjoyed it. Love listening to you. When you were talking about the sort of connection to Chuck C and the idea of just doing your job as trying to be of service and trying to help. I actually was just thinking earlier that I had just sent before. I'd sent Gary a text because I wasn't going to be at the digs tonight, and I actually had a really busy day because I had a lot of work to do for work, and then I was sending Gary this text, and I sent him a text saying, because I had just paused when agitated or doubtful because I wanted to come to this meeting or the digs meeting tonight or both, and thought, no, I can't do that. And then of course Gary sends me a text and is like, I'm going to this, and Robbie's speaking. I'm like, oh crap, now I have to go listen. And but just earlier I'd been talking to one of my sons about things, and was talking to him and had been saying to him that I thought maybe he could, if he wanted to try some meditation or something like that, that might be a good thing, because I've always found that when I do that stuff, it doesn't actually take away from the amount of time that I have. That when I go ahead and I used to find this when I went to AA, and then I was just planning on skipping the meeting so that I could get more work done. So, I'm much better. I'm much better at giving advice than taking it. But anyhow, it was a great share. It was good to hear from you. And I always, Robbie's one of the guys that I like to call, when I know I need to talk to somebody, but I don't want to talk to Gary about it. So that's it's always it's always good to have people like that in your stable. So great to see you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you so much. We'll open it up. So if you'd like to share, we'll just raise your hand in the participation chat box. You can raise your hand or whatever. And if we don't have any hands raised, we'll just call on some people. So let's see what we got here. Liz H, how you doing over there?
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Liz.
Hey, everybody. That was really awesome. I was just thinking how impressive it was, how persistent you were. And for me, I'm still fairly new at this. It's definitely encouraging to hear somebody just talk about, slowly and consistently being willing to to seek help and to grow, and even like just how you were describing that you didn't know why exactly or which direction you were going specifically, but just that willingness to keep coming back and asking questions and taking direction, and how you can look back and see that the course your life took is all, is a wonderful blessing as a direct result of taking those consistent directions. So that's inspiring for me to hear. I like somebody just said I'm an alcoholic every day, and I'm new. I've never heard that before, and I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I don't know. I think being new and being looking at emotional sobriety as, I don't want to drink today. I definitely don't want to drink. I'm not interested in that, but I am because of this program, and I'm trying to follow the directions. I'm trying to take instruction. I'm doing the prayer and meditation. So I feel a little bit like a fully resensitized human being. I want to be useful. I want to be good. I've had moments and glimpses of this God experience and connections with people in this program, and I want more of that. So I'm absolutely willing to take instruction, and also taking, like somebody else said about the fourth step. There's something I was telling a sponsee today, like there's always something in my blind spot, and I think it's interesting, how cool God is that He made us this way. That I can't do it by myself, no matter what. There's always something in my blind spot. And for me, when I take a piece of inventory to a friend or my sponsor or anybody, I'm usually given that missing piece of the puzzle, and it helps me to see what I'm missing, and I just can't do that by myself. Like God's a total gangster the way He like forces us into spiritual interdependency like this. And it's something that when I first got sober, it was hard for me to pick up the phone and call people. It was hard for me to be vulnerable and tell people, expose myself, like what's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. There's always something missing, but just getting comfortable with being willing to be vulnerable and to share my flaws with other people, which I've never had that in my life. I have a loving family, I have a lot of relationships, but I've never had relationships like I have developed in AA, where I'm comfortable enough and open enough to call somebody and say, I'm trying, but I know that there's a screw loose somewhere. Can you help me find that screw? This is the most amazing experience I think I've ever had. Just to be able to do that, and the more I do it and the more I try to help other people do it, the more willing I am, and the less ego is involved at all about feeling I need to protect myself. Like you said, protect your ego and building the case. I catch myself building the case, and I can laugh at myself today because it's like, that's exactly what we're all here collectively kind of battling against is this bullshit case that doesn't really exist. Have said enough. But the one last thing I heard today that really made me smile and think a lot was that at a meditation meeting this morning, you can't get the ocean into a thimble, but you can drop a thimble into the ocean. So thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Liz. I think a lot about that. There's a solution, that part that says we have a design for living, that a real design for living. And you got a problem with your job, you want to kill yourself 10 years sober, design for living. Go back to it. Kid transitioning, design for living. You got an ego problem with divorce, design for living. You got a successful business and you got a big ego and nobody likes you, design for living. All these things, design for living. Go back through this process. And the answer always is never more self. It's always more unconditional love. That's exactly what Bill was talking about. Minus dependency, minus demand. I love you unconditionally. How can I show up for you? And that's exactly what you were talking about that I thought was so good. Like, how am I showing up in this area? How am I showing up in this area? How am I being unconditionally loving? What about Kurt? What's up, Kurt? What's up, Kurt Z? What are you doing, man?
I was zoning. No, Kurt alcoholic. I was thinking when you were sharing, I kept watching Dale because Dale was laughing the whole time. You'd say something and Dale would be giggling over in the corner. Yeah. What was I thinking about? I was thinking about when in his letter, he said victimized by false dependencies. And I think what's really funny is, but he did not know he had these false dependencies. Like, I mean, there's some history behind it. I think I talked about it one time here about him going through some therapy with a woman called Frances Gillespie Hicks in 1948 after going through therapy with Tebow. And she was a Jungian therapist, and she, after working with him a couple of years, coined the fact that Bill was suffering from a personality, like a personality number one, personality number two. And she coined it false self, true self. And this false self was these false dependencies. So, and the reason I'm bringing this up is to make my point. My point is, you know, we always talk about causes and conditions, but if we don't get down to the cause of the causes and conditions, we just keep going around and round and round and round with different circumstances. There's no freedom. And the cause is the misidentification, or I say, it's really not misidentification. This is what I was thinking about. It's identification as self. That's not us. That's conditioning, belief systems, old ideas, who we think we are. That's not who we are. We are so much bigger than that. And that's what the revelatory experience of waking up reveals to us. It shows us, oh, I'm not this, you know, that's why guilt and I think guilt and shame drop, or fear falls from us. You know, I used to always look at fear like, I love the way a guy that I sponsored a long time ago, he used to say, look, we look at fears, we look at all the leaves on the tree, we look where fear lands and we miss fear. We say, oh, fear of financial insecurity. We look at the financial insecurity, but we miss the fear. And the whole point of looking at all the leaves on the tree or all the fears is to see fear. False evidence appearing real, like to break us out of that delusion. So I just think, I say this, you guys heard me say it before, I thank God I'm not suffering from what's not happening anymore. Because that was most of my problem, was I was listening to the commentary in my head that had nothing to do with what reality was about in front of me. And I remember one of our guys here that's no longer with us used to say this, I think Gary probably remember. He used to say, you know, there's never enough money, but there's always enough money. And it's like that's a position of neutrality. And that's a place I can see with clarity, not intellectual commentary, but clarity. So that's all I got. Thanks, Sam.
So much, man. Love hearing from you. Thank you, Kurt.
Looks
What
like
about
we
What
got
about
a
Aaron?
couple raised hands.
Oh, we do? Okay. Hold on. Let's do Sarah. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah, and I'm an alcoholic.
Sarah?
Robbie, that was great. Just awesome. I love it was so down to earth and so kind of matter of fact, but it really spoke to my heart. I know that one of the things that I was kind of reminded of was we have that on the page 60, whatever it is, 68, at the bottom of page 68, where it starts talking about, it says now about sex, many of us needed an overhauling there. I need to replace the word sex and just leave it blank. Now about, fill in the blank, many of us needed an overhauling there. And I know for me, I did. And no matter what it was, I had it wrong. And because it was based on self. But as soon as I got out of self and started basing it on something more altruistic and more, more about what God was trying to get me to see, which he often needed a 2x4 to do, things got better for me. So, and I know that when it comes to like inventory and to me, we can't do an inventory if we haven't, we have to get steps 1 and 2 and 3 first. We have to, especially 2 and 3, and we have to get that God understanding with us. I can't do inventory without that first. And a lot of people say that if you're having trouble, you need to go back and do inventory. And I find that if I'm having a lot of trouble with something, I need to go back to steps 2 and 3 and get right with God first, and then start doing the inventory part. Because if I don't get honest with that part of it, I don't get well. And then if I don't get honest in my inventory, I still don't get well. Just an experience that I had, I was working with a gal who was, I don't know, I found out much later that when I had moved to where I live now, I had gotten this job where this other woman had applied. And when she had started working at the same place several months after I worked, and by that time I was sober, I was only a couple of months sober when she started working, but for some reason she just couldn't stand me and hated me and just, she was bad mouthing me, trying to get me into trouble, and this went on, and I just kept walking on eggshells and trying to make amends for things I didn't know what I was making amends for, and talking to my sponsor, and my sponsor says, treat her like a newcomer. And I said, what the hell does that mean? And it started dawning on me after I was going through this for a long time that treating her like a newcomer meant that we treat the newcomer, we give them all the love and kindness and warmth and welcome that we possibly can, so that we can help them find a God of their understanding, and then we can take them through the book and we can help them stay sober and have that design for living. So when I started understanding that's what I was supposed to be doing with her, then I started trying to do that. Well, it didn't work necessarily for her, but it worked for me. And then, this kept going on, and then it came to it. And I would go through periods of time when I would stop working on that and, stop paying attention to it. And I'd be okay for a while. And then that resentment would crop up again. And I just couldn't do anything about it. And every night I write a letter to God. And one night I started writing to God, and I started telling him how angry I was about this. I was cussing at God. I was yelling at him. God, what the hell do you want from me? I've been doing everything I'm supposed to be doing here. I'm making amends. I'm praying for her for 2 weeks, and then I pray another 2 weeks. And, and I know I tried to let go of it, and I know I get claw marks in it, but I'm still letting go of it. Anyway, it went on, and the letter went on. And at the end of the letter, as usually happens with me, once I get all that craziness out of my head and out of my heart, then I start asking God, what is his will for me? And, so I said, God, I know there's a lesson for me to learn here, and I don't know what that is, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be rid of this. And, and if making a bad example is an example to somebody else of what not to do, then I'll do the bad example even. But, just let me know, just whatever your will is, that's what, and that's how I ended the letter. And I had been sobbing through this letter. And at the time I was reading, what's called the Recovery Devotional Bible. And I opened up the page, and it wasn't where I had been reading, but it had a life's passage in it. And the passage said, the battle is not ours, it's God's. Stand firm and you will have victory. So of course I said, what do you mean, God, the battle's not ours? But I understood that I was fighting a battle with somebody that if I had just let that go, that he was fighting that battle for me. I didn't have to fight that battle. I don't have to fight those battles. I have God on my side. I have God with me. I take God with me wherever I go. I've just got to let him handle that. And it was really a lesson in letting go and letting God. And the next day when I went to work, I walked past her desk, and there was no more eggshells. There was nothing. There was no anxiety. There was no fear. There was no resentment. There was none of those bedevilments. And I got to my desk, and I knew that had been removed. That whole thing had been removed. I was free of that. And 2 months later, she quit. So That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Veronica, would you like to share?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sam. Thank you, Robbie. You know, listening. Oh, my name's Veronica, and I'm an alcoholic. Listening to you talking tonight. I was a couple of things. 3 things really struck me. First of all, I've done some really lame ass 4th steps. You know, it's just, I just don't get it. You know, I don't think that there is a 4th step yet that I haven't had to have a sponsor sit down and like a 2-year-old coach me through the 4th column, because I don't know why, I just freeze. I cannot see my part in a lot of stuff. I just, it's kind of funny, and it's not funny because it's personal, but that's part of who I am. You know, it's, I know it will come with more experience, and I know it will come with more guidance. And, you know, the good news is, and why I love this meeting so much, is I get to witness and I get to hear how others have done it before me, you know, how they've walked the yellow brick road and how they've dealt with certain situations. I know that I've got a couple of things that, you know, it's been rattling around in my head for the last couple of weeks. You know, it's like this, you know, making amends, cleaning stuff up. And there's a couple of, you know, touchy subjects that I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. I know that it needs to be addressed. And I'm really scared for what the ramifications might be. But listening to you tonight, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Somebody has already been there. Somebody knows how to do this. And when I'm ready to start asking that question, you know, I'll be guided to who can show me, well, this is how you do that particular horror situation. I also, left to my own devices, and look, it's getting better. And I just want to share one story with you. I've been in program now for almost 4 years, and it was only last year, and I've been dirty. There was a situation, I was living and working in Hong Kong for 15 years, and this is about 10 years ago. I was working in a corporate job there. I was just about to settle on a property purchase, and 2 weeks before settlement, I get let go from the job. And man, and this is a woman that I knew her husband from a previous job. We were friends. She introed me into this role and gave me this role. Man, I was so dirty. For 6 months, I was planning. You know, what reminded me is about, you know, your story about wanting to run over the kids, is that I was planning. You know, I knew which nightclub I'd see her in. I knew where there were not cameras. I was going to shove her down a flight of stairs, and that was my solution to getting even with someone. And for 6 months, thank God I never ran into her, because I would have done it and I would have ended up in a Chinese jail somewhere. And we all know, you know, that's worse than not good. But here's the other thing, is that this is speaking to the way that I used to think, without any guidance, without any steps, without any sponsor. You know, I'm sitting there, I get let go on a Friday, and I'm sitting in the taxi with my box of goodies on my way home to my place. And I'm like, holy batshit Batman, I got to settle on this property. If the deposit's already there, if the bank checks up and asks me for a requalification of my employment status before settlement goes through, I am effed. And so, never mind the job that I've just lost, I get on the phone. This is my thinking. I get on the phone, I call some mates of mine who have got their own business. I said, you know, they go, oh, hi, how are you? I'm like, oh, look, I've been better. I just got fired today. And they're like, oh, dear. I said, no, that's not actually the problem. My problem is that I settle on this apartment in 2 weeks' time. Listen, I'm just running something by you. Would you consider, if I transfer some money to you, would you be prepared to pretend that you employ me? And, you know, you can pay me my own money. And basically that's how, and they said yes. I couldn't believe it. Now, I'm pretty sure that's called mortgage fraud. And thank God I didn't actually need to use it. But that's where, left to my own devices, that's where I go, because I'm looking for those kinds of solutions. And there are always solutions about me. Here's one good piece of news. And it was 3 years, this was just last year. It occurred to me, working on this fourth step, this same woman's on my resentment list, we're 10 years down the track. And it occurred to me, and I just had this epiphany, and I went, hang on a minute, I think I owe her an amends. And it's almost like the dialogue in my head going, what? Oh, you don't owe her an amends. She fired you 2 weeks before you're supposed to say, it came out of the blue. And I'm like, no, hang on a minute. I was a 40%er. In other words, I always thought I was a 100% effort person. And the reality is, over the last almost 4 years, I've come to realize that I'm actually about 40% effort is about, a real comfort zone for me. So, that age old, if you had seen, if you could see yourself through your boss's eyes, you probably would understand why you got let go from that job. And, she gave me that job. They threw shed loads of money at me to train me. I did, I'm a really good performer. When I work, I'm really competent, talented, and gifted and very good at what I do. But that's about less than 40% of the time. So, as I said, I just want to finish with, that's the good news. And I never in a million years would I have thought any time in the last 10 years that I would ever owe this woman an amends for, never mind I don't need to go into the throwing down the stairs story, but just the fact that she gave me the opportunity to have that job, and I did a half-assed job at it. So anyway, thanks for listening, and thanks for your share. It's just re-brought up some stuff and clarified to me what I used to do and how I go about it now. I will remember to call my sponsor first. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Ronnie.
It's so funny. It's like when you're sharing your solution, about giving the money to your friends who owes them over the other companies and all that. Everybody's like, oh yeah, I get that. I understand. That's a good idea. You get a bunch of people nodding in the place. So Robbie, I've got you for a few more minutes. And one of the things that is important to me, that we talk about God so much, and we talk about putting God first and being a conduit of God's love. What experiencing God looks like to me is when I begin to go back through the steps and I have these surrender experiences, all of a sudden these things that I was really putting a lot of energy and effort towards, the particular, whatever the problem is or whatever the resentment is, I start to loosen my grip a little bit, and almost inevitably there's always a sponsee that shows up. I mean, I sponsor several men, but there's always several guys that show up with almost similarly the same thing. And I end up always almost cat-a-corner between the person that has some degree of that problem in my life. And then you mentioned something that you said in meditation, when I bring it back into centering prayer meditation and I relax, instead of trying to just really force a solution, the intuition comes. Like I've had some serious intuition come that handled some big shitty situations that I know I didn't think of. And I was like, oh, wow. And another thing is I go from having this feeling like I like it's me against the world, or I've got to solve these problems in life, or I'm trudging uphill, to I feel like the wind's at my back and it's okay. Everything feels like a loose garment, and money doesn't scare me. And there have been times in my life where I'm scared shitless of money. No matter how much money I have, I'm scared shitless of money, I remember I was telling Tom, when he started sponsoring, we were going back to the steps. I go, yeah, I kind of still left some of the stuff from the divorce. I have a little bit of this debt left over, just about $100,000. I was making a shit ton of money. He said, why are you in so much debt? I'm like, I don't know. It's just never going to pay it off anyway. It's just some credit lines, just in the minute, whatever it is, screw it out. Someday I'll get over it. And I'm actually paid all that shit off. When the God thing happens, all this momentum starts to happen. And I feel like I've got momentum behind me too. Now, I personally read a lot of spiritual books, do a lot of meditation, study a lot of different religious traditions, and really into some of that stuff. but that's not how I really experience God, honestly. I really get some thoughts, and it helps to feed my brain. But how is it at 30 years of sobriety, how is it that you find and do you experience God, Robbie? What's that look like for you?
I think sometimes it's through other people, right? That I'm willing to actually sit and pay attention to other people, right? That I'm not the guy floating above the chair, that I'm really, tuned into other people's lives. And I think, a quick experience with that today at work, we had like a supervisor out that's sick, and we had, kind of the guy underneath him, and we had a little meeting scheduled to kind of review, doing some of that supervisor's work with this other guy. And all he wanted me to see was that he was taking care of the job, and that I was willing to invest the time in noticing that he was doing that. Right. And there's times in my life where I just think I'm too busy. I'm too busy for all this. Right. It's like kind of this old, I think, management style where you're like, my door's wide open, come see me anytime. And when somebody shows up, you're like, what are you doing here? And really, I've invited them in, right? And I'm that shows up when I'm present. It really does. And just the little things. It's just the little things. Planning my day, being prepared, right? That's one of the keys of this whole thing. And I think, meditation in the big book in 1934, I bought a Webster's dictionary from 1930, and it said the general prepares his plan, right? It wasn't really an Eastern influence at the time. And so if I get off track, what I try to do is get simply back to that, right? That I'm doing the simplest part of this and preparing my plan. And I think that's what connects me back, right? Connects me back, just the little things. I love getting off into literature and stuff like that. But as soon as I kind of get to a point where I'm not doing that anymore, I got to come back to just what's in the big book on 86 and 87. Just simplify it down, and it works. It works.
Thank you, Robbie. Don, what's it look like for you?
I was just sitting here. Thank you for calling on me, Sam. I was just sitting here listening, and first few people that shared talked about having, children, adult children or near adult children, and I went through a process with that this week. And Saturday, I just was struck by this unhealthy dependencies. The things that I get attached to, that I place in front of what should be my priority in my life. And, how that looks for me to keep that channel open. And while we were reading, I actually went on the internet and read the St. Francis prayer. And I realized I just kind of had an image of, Bill studying this thing. Why can I not get this? And I was just like, this must, because this is me. I want to be this person who's so kind and so gentle. And Saturday at 2 p.m, when one more time my daughters were late, I was just like, you people, I've raised feral maniacs. And I went through this whole thing where what they needed to do and how they needed to do it to make my world okay. And of course, if anybody hears me share, I have a rule about having conversations with people who aren't there. And I was talking to them. I was giving them a piece of my mind on Monday morning, And needless to say, it's Thursday, and I've written inventory. And like the one gentleman shared, a solitary self-appraisal is insufficient. And I have a very wise teacher, and she said to me, what if those kids never responded to anything? And I went, it just dumbfounded me. And I realized when she said that, how off-putting that was to my emotional stability. And it became very apparent that I had placed them in a position that they weren't to be in, which is there to provide me with the security. And at which point it becomes an unreasonable demand, And I was furious with them about the way they were raised. They must have been raised wrong. I don't know who's done this to these kids. It must have been their father. So anyway, but I was lucky because, you know, we live in a world where those amount of attachments are lethal. They are deadly to me. And I kind of arrived at, because I was sent back to, you know, reassess this inventory that was purely intellectual exercise so I would feel better, to actually say, what's really going on here? And I was able to get far enough to, I need my kids to do this. I need my kids to do that. This is not good, whatever, you know, the whole scene. And then finally is, well, what if that doesn't happen? Well, if that doesn't happen, this will be. And if that, and I finally get back to what? There's no God, Dawn? Is that where you're going to place your dependency, is on kids who have their own lives, living with COVID, and I raised them. They are not well, I'm sure. So I mean, it's not like I gave them an emotional foothold to get a good start with. And then I read it, and I'll just say this. I read the part about Bill with the talking about the newcomer situation. And I thought to myself, well, if I placed myself in here as, you know, spiritual calculus, Dawn the mother trying to work spiritual calculus with unruly kids, which is sort of like the sponsor and the sponsee. So if my kids were to do whatever they wanted to do and move on to the next person, could I be happy? Oh no, oh no. I'm not going to be rejoicing that they're out there giving all this attention to others. It's not going to, because I have an unreasonable demand. And it makes me, I love the front page, because since we have begun this, I have really tried to connect to the idea that it offers to us, which is adult love. Am I going to have an immature love, or am I going to have an adult love? And I will have an immature love and an unreasonable demand if there's not a God that gives me the sufficient amount of compassion for myself and others. I don't have it on my own. So it's very necessary. But I like what it says, and I'll just say this. Perhaps that Dawn, given enough effort and assurance and direction, will be able to be a spearhead in the next major development in AA. That is the development of more real maturity. And that is to say humility, to admit that this week I failed as a mother. I put unreasonable demands upon my kids to provide me with security. And with that, I can be able to have proper relations with my kids, because we're in the right order. God's at the top, I'm next, and then others, and with my fellows and with God. And then that humility comes, and I will tell you that, you know, since I kind of got, I won't say right-sized, because I don't know what my size is supposed to be, but I know that the fifth step gives me the proper order of things. And I had my kids at the top, me next, and God at the bottom. And I had it in the wrong order. And I was able to get that back to where it is. Thank you for calling on me, Sam, because I was just sitting here going, oh my God, it's Thursday. I made it to Thursday. Anyway, thank you for sharing, Robbie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
So, hey, Robbie, do you have anything you forgot about that you feel like we got one more minute? Anything you want to add in there that you might have felt like you left out?
Yeah, the only thing, I think you said loose garment. I think, you know, I wake up in the morning with a straight jacket on, right? And
Yeah.
if without the prayer and meditation, I'm like cinching down the straps, right? Oh, this is going to be tight today, boys. And
Yeah.
with some prayer and meditation, I forget I'm supposed to do that. And that's kind of the key. That's kind of the key. That's it.
Awesome. You know, one of the guilty pleasures I have on the Zoom thing, and I found I liked it in meetings too, but I just wasn't ever really to identify it, is I like watching other people listen. You know, like I like seeing a bunch of people on the screen and watch how people are listening to different stuff. You know, anyway. So
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're gonna mute ourselves and we kind of go to our inner room and just be quiet and inwardly say the Lord's Prayer to ourselves. Amen. Thank you so much for coming on, Robbie. And next week we have, if you want to join in, we have Missy D. Yeah. So that'll be fun, right? So she's going to be on next week. So thank you guys for everything. Much love. And
Thanks, Robbie. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Robbie.
it.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks, Robbie.
Appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, Robbie. Great share.
Thank you.